Tania. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm really good, thanks, Grant. I've just come out of a whirlwind few weeks actually, so I'm about to head into chill mode. So good.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
tell us before we get into the questions. Tell us about the last couple of weeks.
Well, I've been working with Fujifilm for launching a couple of their new products. So yeah, and they launched those last week, and so I've been busy with that. Yeah,
Excellent. Sounds like a lot of fun.
it has been. Yeah, a lot of fun.
So, what is photography in your life? Obviously, it's a big deal. How much of a big deal, and what is it?
Well, I think everything revolves around photography, and I always kick myself when I don't have a camera. Everything revolves around photography.
Okay, cool. So, where did it all start for you? What's the Tanya Malkin story?
It's a long one.
That's fine.
When
We've
I
got plenty
was,
of time.
I think I can't remember the exact age, but like I used to collect travel postcards. So, when we used to go on our family camping trips around, I used to collect travel postcards and hang on to them, and I had
No.
piles and boxes of them when I was a kid. And then I think Mum got sick of buying me travel postcards and thought it might be cheaper to give me a camera. So I then, from about seven, I think, or eight maybe, I chased beautiful landscapes with my film camera. And
Cool.
I think Mum regretted it because it cost her a lot more in film
Yeah, I can imagine
processing
with all the film
than
and the
it did.
developing and everything.
It did, and it did him. They were 20-cent postcards. Yeah.
I know a lot of people
Yeah.
nowadays because of the nostalgia and the challenge and everything of getting things right in camera. But yeah, I won't go back.
Yeah.
It's just too expensive.
Yeah. It's too expensive. I've still got my film cameras. I still look at
Yeah,
them.
same here.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't use them anymore. I should one day. I've probably still got some old film, which it sure would give me some gnarly images. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I've
yeah,
seen people
it'll
develop it
be
in
out of date.
soup and everything, which is kind of bizarre, but
Yeah, yeah. So that's, I guess, the start of my photo journey. And then I sort of desperately wanted to go to a school that had photography on offer. And
hmm
I went to a very small school and they didn't have photography. So I focused on art and studied art and design and ended up hating painting and didn't pick up a paintbrush for about 25 years
Wow.
after art school, and then still loved the photography part. So
Yeah.
I used to photograph to reference for paintings back in my early university post school days, and then just got rid of the paintbrushes and the paint and focused on the camera.
Sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like the artistic side of things came in really early with your photography. Some people sort of start with documenting their travels and that sort of thing, just, taking a snapshot of a nice scene or whatever. But I guess, what interests me is where people realize, okay, it's now changing in my own head that this is no longer just taking a document of what I'm seeing, but moving into something that more artistic, and I'm trying actually to deliberately create. When did that happen for you?
I would say probably during art school, they force you to paint and do things that you don't like.
I remember art
And-
history, reading the art history books. I quite enjoyed reading them, but I didn't like
yeah.
listening to the art history lectures they brought.
Well, see, I did one of my, I guess my majors was art history, but I hated the precision of the old school graphic arts. Like
Yeah,
that was one of my, and the life drawing classes and the just drawing stuff you don't like drawing. I guess I've always been a landscaper. I love beautiful landscapes and the light and even from, when I was young at seven, that's what I loved. So I was always on the search for a beautiful vista and that postcard moment that I could do. But then I guess I turned it like I didn't I didn't want to be a location photographer. I wanted to do things differently. So I didn't just want to go around and chase tourist spots and things like that. So I
yeah,
think there was a deliberate shift from chasing beautiful postcard perfect scenes to, trying to create something that was still a scene, but encompassed everything that I was to create my emotion rather than emotion of your typical tourist scene, like,
Yeah.
oh, look at that beautiful blue sky and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's, I think the epiphany moment probably came, after art school where, I just didn't want to produce, I didn't want to produce postcards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't say I blame you. I like
Yeah.
I like taking a postcard shot occasionally, but yeah.
Yeah, it is nice. And you sit there in these beautiful locations and how can you not? But I think, everybody wants to produce something different and create their
Yeah.
own style and I think I actively started to pursue that fairly early on.
What is it that you think really drove you to go for that change in style and looking for the uniqueness? What was it that sort of drew you towards that?
I think potentially probably the shift from film to digital and the
Okay.
competition that maybe the competition and the flooding of the market with, everyone with their digital cameras and trying to move sideways and just produce different work and a point of difference
Hmm.
and be taken seriously as an artist rather than just another photographer that takes pretty pictures. Yeah.
Sure. So a lot of your work recently has been aerial based. So, jumping on planes and helicopters, I'm assuming, to get up there and get a very different perspective of the landscape. I've been speaking to a few other land aerial photographers in the past few weeks, and I'm really interested in what drove that shift from terrestrial photography to being, in the
Up
air.
in the sky. So I used to fly a lot for my corporate job, probably almost 15, 20 years ago now.
Okay.
So it's a while ago when I work it out. And so I had the luxury and the pleasure of going to a lot of the highly photogenic areas around WA for work. But I guess being on a commercial bus all of that time, I like my window seat and and I just kept looking out the window and trying to work out where things were on the map and kept thinking to myself, I'm going to photograph this one day. And back when I took my aerial flight in the early 2000s, I think I bought bought myself an aerial flight to take aerial photographs, and that just I was sold basically. That was something that I really wanted to do and continue to do. And then, friends with planes and helicopters that would offer to take me flying whenever I went up north and things like that. And I guess I shifted because it was so different and so different at the time. There wasn't many people doing it.
Sure.
So I guess it was a good point of difference at the time. And then the more you do it, the more you see and the more places you want to do and yeah, and I guess the more defined your work becomes. And
Mm.
yeah, I find it harder to shoot on the ground now than in the sky. So
Okay,
yeah,
that's interesting. I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
guess what is it that is the challenge now on the ground? Is it just you can't get high enough? You can't get a
I
tripod?
get high enough. Yeah. And I've got a four section, but I'm not tall enough to get to the viewfinder when I've got to extend on the four section. I think, yeah, I think it's hard to explain actually. I think I still shoot from the ground, but I think it probably takes a lot from the ground to impress me enough to,
Sure, sure.
I guess, to post those kind of images.
Yeah,
Because I've got thousands, I've got hard drives full. Like I'm traveling at the moment, and I've got four hard drives in my bag, and then God knows how many at home. So I've got hard drives full, but I probably don't share them on socials uh,
right, right.
as much because I guess yeah they don't like it's beautiful and they're print worthy and but I guess they just don't impress me as much as
That's
some of the
interesting.
aerial stuff.
So, do you set creative challenges for yourself with your aerial photography? And if so, how do you go about that?
I think the creative challenge for me constantly is trying to shoot somewhere that no one else has yet. Yeah, because there's a lot of shooters out there now doing it, and so the creative challenge is to come up with something different,
Yeah, right.
and rather than, or a different area and different colors and a different way of looking at it. I think there's, places that 5 years ago people hadn't flown yet, and even when Mika and I flew Kaditunda Lake
Yep.
Air back in Bean, I think. There was only a handful of people that had hit it, so to speak. And, Julie Fletcher was out there and there was a handful of others that kind of went in and did it. But now every second person has done some sort of photographic tour to Kaditunda. So it's just trying to find different places and different colours and places that people don't recognize as being somewhere that they've seen yet. And then, yeah, I think that's my biggest creative challenge. Yeah.
Okay. And what about in terms of your planning for a shoot? How much effort goes into that? Because obviously to organize the aircraft to wherever it is that you want to and take that shot, it's not like jumping in the car going down the beach and sunset, because forecast looks good.
Yeah, so I drive everywhere just about. That I love flying in small planes and helicopters, but I hate flying in commercials. So
Yeah.
if I can drive it, I'll drive it. And I have a dog that comes everywhere with me. So yeah, so that's also an important factor in my planning is my dog. And I plan 12 months out. I know where I'm going to shoot 12 months out usually. And I plan that based around what the season's doing and what the tides are doing and what the what the light's doing. Like last year, I would have liked to have reshot Kaditunda again well, about this time last year actually, but the water wasn't doing the right things, so I didn't go. So
Right.
I'll hopefully reshoot that again
Yeah.
in the next 18 months or so. But just little things like that where I plan 12 months out because I figure if I'm gonna spend a load of money on a flight, I want it to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so I'm not just gonna, like, it'd be nice to drive in somewhere and have a quick look at the tides and Google Earth and say let's go for a fly, but I've very rarely, actually, I don't think I've ever done that. I've
Yeah.
tried to do it down on the Eyre Peninsula and it hasn't
Right.
worked. So I plan 12 months out. I know where I'm flying early next year and the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about on the day, if it's, overcast or foggy or something like that, what are you doing? Are you sort of saying, all right, we'll put it off
Pumpkin.
tomorrow morning or
Usually I had this situation last year, the exact situation. So I booked flights and I booked them 9 months out and it was perfect tide, perfect time. So, and then for the week before, the sea fog started to roll in, like thick sea fog, like you couldn't see. And then the day before, there was pretty thick sea fog, and the day of, there was pretty thick sea fog. But I think the fog worked in my favor. So it diffused the light beautifully. So the colors were pastel and soft rather than
right?
the blurring, like, the outback colors. So
Yeah.
I think it worked in my favor and we were able to fly below the fog.
Right.
So yeah, so while we didn't get those vivid turquoise colors that you sometimes would usually expect, I got some very beautiful pastels and some very beautiful soft color. And I'm going to fly that area again at the same time. And I'm hoping for sea fog. I want to get some more of those beautiful pastels. So, and it's the same with fire, like in the Kimberley and in the Territory when the burning happens
Mhm.
in, sort of August and or July and August. I this Unless the bush is burning right next to where I'm shooting, it usually works in my favor because it diffuses that really harsh light and you get even more incredible golds and you get that gold shimmer on the blue water and stuff like that. So I never discount clouds. I did a shoot in Shark Bay early this year for as a part of the Fujifilm project, and for a place that hasn't had rain for such a long time, the second on my second flight we had cloud and we had the pillow clouds, and the pillow clouds usually mean it's going to rain.
Yep.
And sorry, I call them pillow clouds. It's not the technical name.
I think it's
And
just, but I'm not sure.
cumulus, yeah, it's kind of before it gets to the cumulus. So I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know. An
I know.
Indigenous lady said to me, to see them clouds, Tanya, them pillow clouds means it's going to rain. So I'm like, okay, so it's in my brain now every time. So yeah, and they were blotchy and it ruined half the shoot, but
Yeah, right.
it was so we called it in early and then yeah, so but the before it was fine. So that's really the only time that I've had clouds really gate crash. One of my shoots was earlier this year.
What do you do in terms of experimentation with your shooting to, get different effects and so forth, different techniques that you might use? Do much experimentation? And if so, how do you deal with the failures that come with experimentation?
I guess I guess the biggest way I force myself to shoot a little bit differently is to take a lens that I don't normally use,
Sure.
which again, I guess it forces me to shoot differently. So I took a 250 and
Okay. Yeah.
I don't normally shoot the detail shots, but I don't normally shoot wide. So I think because I'm looking for a scene or a story in an image rather than just pure aerial abstracts. So I took the 250 and I actually really enjoyed it because it forced me to shoot some detail stuff that I wouldn't normally shoot. They're a little bit different. I'll probably take it again.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess that's how I experiment when I'm flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And you can only go up so high. At 250, if I want to open up the scene, it's still the telephoto on it is still at 3,000 feet even. Like it's still, you know, a long enough lens that I'm still not getting those wide open scenes that I would
Yeah.
normally shoot. Yeah, but still got some beautiful detail and even detail down lower in the thousands, 1500s.
Have you ever had any experimentation sort of go wrong? And if so, how did you handle that?
Oh, experimentation could go wrong. In the sky? Yeah, I have actually. I normally shoot a particular site and in the afternoon, and I decided to shoot it in the morning to try something different.
Yep.
Got it completely wrong. Useless. Waste of money flight. Yeah, never used a shot from it. Never will. Yeah, the light was just wrong. It didn't do it. It didn't
Yeah.
do anything for me. The shadows were going the wrong way. The light was too slow to come up and give it anything.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I thought I would give it a go just to see, but yeah, it was a bad call. Very bad
I
call.
guess the disappointment there is also got a financial cost associated with it
That's
too.
exactly right. And a big financial cost because I'd driven about 900 k's on really bad dirt road and and booked in at one of the stations and stayed and yeah, it was a bad call. It's a
Yeah.
bad call. So
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned storytelling and wanting to tell stories with your images.
Mhm.
What other stories that you're trying to communicate? And I guess how much is it your success do you attribute to being able to communicate those stories?
I think I think it's important. I try and communicate a story, and it's usually about relationships with the environment and how things interact and are reliant on each other. And but I think it's also important from my perspective is that people create their own stories with what they see in
Sure.
images as well. So especially when it's hanging on a wall in an art gallery, it's interesting when you watch people and they quite often come up with something completely different to you. The point with one of my images I actually had facing another way and then this lady just came and she just told me this amazing story about what she saw in this image and I've actually flipped the image because I enjoy her story a lot more than I enjoyed mine. Yeah. So I think from and particularly with the aerials and the abstract aerials,
Yeah.
I think it's that the communication of the story. I think people are interested in what they're looking at, and they're interested in a name. Like I name all of my work, and they are interested in how I shot it, and what it is and where it is. And they're interested in my little spiel that I talk about. But I think maybe that little spiel that I talk about and the name evokes a journey for them into the picture, into the
Yeah.
image, and
Yeah.
then they can create an emotional attachment to it with the other things that they see.
Yeah, sure.
If that does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. What does success look like for you, photography?
Success, I guess, is when someone, that's the biggest compliment when somebody purchases your work and puts it on their wall.
Yeah, sure.
There's nothing more flattering than if somebody is attached enough to a piece and to the point where they want to buy it and display it and make it a part of their home or their business. Or yeah, I guess that's the success for me. Yeah, I don't want to rule the world. Landscape photography, not what I would measure my success. And I guess I find it quite satisfying actually when I look at images that I shot, in 2013 that I'm
Yeah.
still happy to print. I pat myself on the back sometimes for that. I think if I still like it nearly 10 years later, then it must be
Yeah,
okay.
it can't be too bad.
So something right there.
I want to move on to, I guess, the business side of things and selling prints and selling your work and whatever is a big part of that. How did you sort of make that decision to get into selling your art?
Selling art. I guess when you get to the point where you're happy with what you're producing and that you know that it's printable and it's good. I used to do the country market
Okay. Yep.
runs. So, like where, years and years ago, or, we'd go up to and do the Nameless Festival in Tom Price and sell all my Carragini prints. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'd do the Darlington Arts Festival and in Perth and then, Port Hedland and Karratha shows and that kind of thing. And then into, then art galleries and a few little selling places. And when people want to buy your work, I would almost be like, yeah, we want this. And I'd go, really?
Right.
I was surprised. Like it was surprising. And then I think as places would be happy and asked to hang your work, then yeah, that's when you make the decision. And I still do a few markets around the place, and I have some amazing friends that help me do markets around the place when I can't do them. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then a few galleries and exhibitions and places around the place that ask for and are happy to sell. So yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. And I guess what's the main thing you've learnt through running your own photography business?
Main thing I've learned is I've learned that I love photography. I've learned that I love showing people how to use their cameras
Yeah.
and how how to be patient, and how I find I love sharing how I get shots, and I love taking people to places they can get their own shots to put on their walls. I think that that's important to keep people inspired, keep producing, their own work. I was lucky enough to do an artist residency at Equestro a few years ago, and one of my favorite things to do would be just to take people out on one-on-ones to my favorite places and let them take an image that they can hang on their own walls,
Yeah. No.
and then continue on their holidays producing work that they're proud of and can hang on their walls when they get home. So yeah, I think that that was, one of the best parts. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Did you start selling and doing workshops and things before you finished full-time work, or are you sort of decided to go full
Yeah.
off the straight off the bat and make a break?
Yeah. So I had enough of corporate rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I just, yeah, I just, I just wanted to produce. And I think when you get to a point when the important things are not always, being corporate, that you've got to do the things you love and you just make it work. So
Yeah.
just make it work if it means that you eat baked beans for a week. That's what you do. Not that I don't think I've ever done that, but I think it's important, and it reflects in your work. there's some pretty dark photos that I took when I was in corporate. You could tell that I was, I was not enjoying my life. I was loving taking photos, but the photos I was producing were pretty angry. I think so when I look back at them. I didn't care if the sky was blue, man. I wanted dark, angry clouds. That's what I looked for. So
Sure, sure.
I just think it reflects if you with what you're doing, if you in the work that you produce. But I'm happy just to share my love of photography with everybody, whether it's teaching them how to use their camera or whether it's producing work that somebody else put on their wall. And my business strategy is pretty much just so.
Okay, it's not a bad strategy. I was going to ask, how do you go about the marketing side of things? Because a lot
I'm
of
terrible at
people
it.
struggle.
I struggle with it. I hate it. I hate putting myself out there. If I
Yeah.
could hire somebody to do that for me, that's what I would do. Absolutely. Most definitely. If I could get somebody to write everything that goes on on Facebook and Instagram and websites and I could just produce, that would be the ideal scenario for me.
Sure.
Most ideal scenario. Yes.
What would
If that,
somebody who booked a workshop with you expect?
I guess what would they expect? They would expect, hopefully, to be absolutely motivated to continue shooting and
Hmm.
have an understanding of how and why the choices that they make when they're doing it are made. So, and I think they would expect a fairly honest presentation, I guess.
Yeah,
I
sure.
I I love I love teaching people, and I used to the media teachers at one of the local high schools with the school kids, like the photography
Yeah,
classes with the school kids, and I love doing the beginners how to use your camera and how to shoot a landscape and chasing light and all that kind of thing. So
nice.
I guess if people workshop with me, it would be more of a one-on-one experience, low numbers model that they would
Yeah,
get out of it what they were wanting to, rather than I'm what I'm prepared to give. Yeah.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. One of the things a lot of people also struggle with on top of the marketing is actual pricing. Do you have a pricing strategy, or is that wing it as well?
That's no, well, one thing that they don't teach you in art school is how to price your paintings.
No, no,
Uh,
nobody does. I think there's probably
no
a,
one does.
a, a
There's
bit of a lucrative
absolutely
thing for
yeah,
helping creating that stuff.
pricing for artists. I actually did enroll on a pricing for artists workshop not that long ago, a couple of months ago. And it's so hard because you know how much work and effort you put into getting the shot. And as you probably know, hiring a helicopter is roughly around $1,600 an hour.
Yep.
Sometimes it's 3,000 Ks travel and hundreds of hours of work that goes behind the $500 print
Yeah.
unframed. So yeah, how do you work that out? I think, and then be competitive as well, because purchasing a piece of art has to be an emotional experience for the
Yep.
buyer. And so you don't want them standing there biting your nails, and you don't want them to have buyer's remorse.
That's it. Yeah. Paid how much for
And
that?
and you've got to be able to yeah, and you've got to be able to read your market, and you've also got to be able to make money on it. And it's just such the hardest thing to do. I think my pricing fluctuates, and the limited edition or even an exhibition when you're exhibiting, you've got your gallery fees, you've got your gallery commissions,
Yep.
you've got to frame things a little bit nicer for an exhibition, you've got your exhibition expenses, catalogs, and it's just such a hard juggling act that I think my pricing structure varies because according to the market and the value of
Yeah.
the print
Mm.
and the limited edition run and how much potentially if you're doing a limited edition run and you're only doing, most people only want to buy one-offs now, like if it's
Yeah,
a
that's
limited
it.
edition, you're never going to get them over $1,000 on
Yeah.
a limited edition that's, one of 10 or one of 20 or one of 30. So it's just a tough market, and the art market at the moment is particularly tough. And, the markets, I think my price point at the markets is, any very low between 15 and $50. So
Yeah.
how do you squeeze that
Yeah. And most
into
people in a
something
in a
that's
market
profitable?
they're kind of happy to pay up to about $50, but when you get
That's
up above
right.
100, people start to, yeah, it's nice, but I'm not in that
Yeah.
market, you know.
People don't bring $100 to them. That's their
No,
total,
that's
not on one purchase. But again, like markets, and I used to say to some of the young people that I was mentoring that the value in markets is the marketing. There's
yeah, getting your
no
name out there. Yeah,
no business in the country that you can pay. I think it's about $65
yeah,
for 4 hours free advertising, basically, and to be able to hopefully sell some wares. So,
yeah, yeah.
there's definitely value in markets. They're pain. They're a pain, but
Yeah,
some people love it.
they're a lot of effort to actually
They're a
do.
lot of effort, but no overheads really, and
Yeah,
so and lots of marketing opportunities at markets,
mm,
especially the small town ones.
yeah,
But
yeah,
pricing structure is something that I have always struggled with and will always struggle with. Again, if I could find somebody that could price things for me and say, no, this is how much it is and this is how much it would be, I would really love that too. Because you don't want to overvalue your work. You're so emotionally attached, especially to something that you've decided you want to print. There's a huge emotional attachment to that image. And how do you value that? It's
yeah,
hard.
exactly. I'm
Yeah,
seeing a couple of business opportunities, I think, in consulting with creatives and helping them price their work and
absolutely.
market their work. You know?
Please do.
If I knew how, I would.
I think like the Sally, I don't know if Sally helps with pricing structure, but Sally Brownville, but yeah, like there was a generic pricing your work for artists workshop that I did do, but that was mostly directed at visual artists and painters and
Sure,
ceramicists and
sure.
things. And even with that side of my little market business, I struggle with too. It's a
Yeah,
hard juggling act, especially in this economic climate.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely, definitely.
yeah.
In terms of places that you've shot, is there a favorite or one that you keep going back to because you've got unfinished business with it?
Yes. Yes, I've got unfinished business with the Northern Territory coastline, most
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, I've got unfinished business with the Kimberley coast. There's a few spots that I haven't finished with yet.
Yeah.
And again, the Kimberley coast. And I think the 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 desert, the Gibson and the Great Sandy places that I will definitely shoot over and over again just because it's so different with the seasonal stuff and last time I shot it I got some really beautiful images, but I didn't get what I was chasing because there was rain and cloud, and so I got some really gorgeous images and images that would be very hard to replicate as a once in a lifetime shoot, but what I went to shoot wasn't there, so I'll be going back.
Yeah, right, right. So are you doing much pre-visualization on what it is that you're thinking about shooting? So obviously using maps and so forth to
Yeah.
work out, okay, well, that's a spot that I've really got to get to. How much
Hmm.
thinking about, okay, what's there? What am I actually going to
Yeah.
frame up, and how am I going to instruct my pilot to get me in the right?
Yeah, yeah. I give my pilots a really good workout when I fly with them. They're under constant instruction usually, and it might just be sometimes I lose my ability to talk, but the fingers and the hands go off, and I eventually find my words. But I I go into a flight with about 30 to 40 GPS locations for that area.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not just we're going here today. So fairly intimately the spots that I want to hit first,
Yep.
and I know exactly what I want to shoot when I get there. And then if I happen to see anything else while I'm there, then we shoot that too. I'm very strict with myself. I try not to get distracted because if I've gone to all the effort of organizing the helicopter or the plane, then I don't want to miss what I went there to shoot. So
Yeah,
I
right.
usually have a list, and the pilot and the company that I book with has the list of the GPS locations I want to go to, and then
Mhm.
the ones that I want to go to with the particular lights. So there's usually always one of those locations that I want to hit first because it's usually an early morning or a late afternoon shoot, or it's one that I want to hit last. So it's like, well, we'll do all of these, but then I want to be here just before we go, and I want 15 minutes to shoot that bit. So it's it's fairly well planned with what I'm doing, and then it's easy to get focused on one particular height and one particular scene. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more disciplined now by sort of we'll start at a certain height, but then we'll come down on it and then we'll go up on it. So
Yep.
there's a strategy. Whenever I happen to bring a second body, which I very rarely do, my second body will have another focal length on there, and then we'll use one focal length in a circle, and then I'll switch camera bodies and we'll do the same circle again with a different focal length. But it's very rare these days that I do that. I usually just do it with changing my heights with the helicopter.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
What's the longest you've actually been in a plane for a shoot?
4 hours. Yeah,
4 hours. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a fair while.
Yeah, and probably the fly time to the first destination was it was probably the longest I've flown to destination. It would have been about an hour and 10 minutes to
Oh, wow.
destination. So it was still only that. So yeah, so it would have been, yeah, what's that?
Just
Two
under
and 2 and a bit
hours.
hours. Yeah, yeah,
Actual shoot.
actual shoot time. Yeah. And then to try and you just don't want one or two images out of that time. To try and produce a decent body of work in 2 hours, 20 to 30 images is quite difficult.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, to produce 20 printers from a 2.5 hour flight, well, a 2.5 hour shoot is is tough gig.
What's your most memorable shoot?
Ah, memorable shoots for lots of reasons. Most memorable shoot. My most memorable shoot is when Mika and I flew a helicopter in from Hawker to
Okay.
Kaditunda, and there's the whole funny story around that. So, but most people fly with rights out at William Creek,
Yep.
and we had done that, but we also decided that we would bring a chopper in as well. So we met the helicopter down at Maree, and we brought the helicopter in from Hawker. So
Right.
that was a significant effort. It was worth the effort, and the pilot was amazing, and the company that we dealt with were amazing. So that's probably one of the most memorable flights that I've done. The most memorable flight from an epic proportion scale was the one that I did last year in the in the Simpson Desert, not Simpson, Great Sandy. Yeah, because it was the flight that I got what I wasn't expecting. I went to shoot some vivid desert color, and
Yep.
then the day before and the day before that it just poured with rain, and I
Right.
got some really incredible, beautiful soft colors that I would love to shoot again, but I seriously doubt I would ever be able to replicate it the
Okay.
way that it was done. And again, the company that I dealt with brought in a media chopper, and so I was harnessed on the skids of the helicopter, which,
Okay. Wow.
yeah, so to be out in the freezing cold, it would have been about -5. My fingers, I couldn't feel my body, and but it was just such a memorable experience because of just the complete different colors on the landscape. The
Mm.
fact that this company had just gone to so much effort to get me the right machine, and as cold as it was, so cold, you wouldn't believe it, how cold it was. And I had just come down from Darwin, so it was I was I'm not used to. I had to buy jumpers especially for that trip,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I imported jumpers from New Zealand because I knew it was going to be cold. They weren't even warm enough, and yeah, but that would be my most memorable flight as from a photographic perspective. The Hawker flight, just from the fun and logistics perspective, I sort of rang Mika and said, Catitunda's looking good. You want to come up in 2 weeks and shoot it? I think it was about 2 weeks notice. And she said, yep. So Meek flew into Alice, and we drove down to William Creek from Alice and made a week of it. Yeah, so that was fun.
nice.
I think I was back in 2015.
And horror stories, have you had any close calls or anything like that?
I don't know if Casa is allowed to know this.
It's all right. I won't tell them.
A few weeks later, after Mika and I went and shot Catitunda, I went down. I was living in Alice Springs at the time, so I went down a few weeks later to try and get some more shots. And a plane had got it landed and got itself bogged in the middle of the lake. So we
Okay.
went out to photograph it. Trevor had promised the news footage, and that he had a photographer there that was going to take some video and some stills of this plane crash. And I'd never used video before. So I was trying to learn how to take video on my camera before the flight. And they'd flown in a big Long Ranger helicopter to winch this plane off the middle of Lake Eyre in its bog. And Trev and I flew out to it, and it got a little bit bumpy, let's say.
Okay.
And it was pretty lucky I was fairly well strapped in. And yeah, there was nearly two planes in the middle
Okay.
and a helicopter too.
Wow.
So needless to say, the news footage wasn't that great.
Mm.
And
So
but yeah,
did
so
the news guys like it or not?
without giving away too much. The footage, yeah, well, the footage, yeah, I think it passed, but yeah, it was that it's yeah, it was pretty scary flight, that flight. So
Sure.
yeah, they actually had to drop the helicopter back into the middle of the lake and go back the next day and pick it up.
Oh, wow.
So the helicopter had to let it go, and so it crashed twice, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, that's probably my horror story. Yeah,
What have you learned about the world through photography?
that there are some incredible creative artists that are so work so collaboratively together. Like it's a community. So
Yeah.
I've learned that there are good people in the world, basically.
I guess having other people around helps defray the cost. Do you fly much with other people or do you just go solo?
Well, I sometimes I fly, like Mika and I have flown a lot together, actually, probably the first well, that there was a period, would have been between 2012 to 2000.
Hmm.
Most of the flights that I did were with Mika.
Yep.
So we've flown together a lot. And, I flew with an amazing person called Nigel Gaunt late
Okay.
last year. So I think Nigel and I did can't remember. I know we spent a lot of money. I think it was about five flights together last
Wow.
year. So, but that's the first time I've flown with anybody for quite a few years.
Yeah, right.
So yeah. So I think it depends. Like there's some things where I would prefer to fly on my own. There's some little secret spots that
Yep. Yep.
not ready to give up yet.
Fair
I
enough.
think people are still trying to guess where they are. Hopefully, they haven't worked it out. We've still got to shoot some stuff there. And yeah, so I don't mind flying with people. I think that absolutely has merit, and the cost is a factor, but also it's really nice just to like you're flying with someone different that sees things differently, and it's nice when you're both calling different shots because you're shooting things that you wouldn't have seen or you wouldn't normally see, but it's still
Yeah.
really interesting when we both come out the other end. Like I went to Nigel had an exhibition with his shots from our flights last year, a couple
Mm.
of months ago now, and the images are different. Like you
Yep.
can tell the colours are the same, but what Nigel saw is completely different to what I saw. And that's
Yeah.
also why I loved flying with Mika, is because we see things differently, and yeah, we'll like piggyback off each other's vision, but there's, still we still shoot our own way. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
it's also a mix of shooting and processing as well. I mean, where did you sort of develop your processing workflow and how
Ah.
does your processing workflow work?
Well, when we changed from film to digital, I did a lot of courses with Nick Meladonis, who is a
Okay, yeah.
WA photographer, and Dale Neal. Like they ran a few workshops back in the early 2000s, like how to use Photoshop kind of stuff. And so I guess I developed a little bit of workflow from those workshops. And then I think my Photoshop skills and my editing skills are still very much the early 2000s.
Okay.
I haven't changed a lot with my flow. I wish every day that I read the Adobe emails that come out with the updates, but I never do. I should, but the tutorials that you get once.
Yeah. I mean, there are
So
some really interesting bits and pieces, but
yeah,
unfortunately, I think a lot of the focus on AI, whilst I really like the remove tools and whatever,
mm,
they're really smart and whatever, I'm not
yeah.
so keen on the expanded, you
No,
know, that sort of thing. It just
I'm
doesn't
not
grab.
that. No, well, and I'm not that. I haven't kind of moved into that area at all yet. When I shoot, I don't normally crop, and I don't normally I usually shoot with the light, and I don't actually do too much at all to my images in post.
Yeah.
Usually it's just a contrast adjustment and a curves adjustment, and
Okay.
a little bit of a cleanup. Very, if it's for a competition print, like I do spend a bit of time on it, but it's more with cleanup stuff rather than manipulation stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I try to plan the shots so that the light does all the post production for me, or the
Yeah.
pre-production,
Cool.
so I don't have to do post production. But yeah, I do edit. Like I do edit, and yeah, but it's usually just
Mm.
very baseline. And I've just changed my, my baseline program. So I'm just moving from Line to Capture One again,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
I did years ago, but just find it um, a little bit more intuitive with that
Excellent.
baseline stuff. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
In terms of when you get off the plane and get back to base, are you straight onto the computer and straight into editing,
yes,
or leave
I'm
it?
straight onto the computer. Yeah, I download to three places.
I'm talking beyond backup because as soon as I can get it to a computer and backed up, and then
Yeah,
backed up again, and then backed up again.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, and I know like um, it's a really bad habit that I have, that if I've got a really good image, I'm on it straight away. Like, and I
Yeah,
know in the
right, right.
plane,
Yeah.
like, if I've got a good image or not. And then I forget about all the other ones for about 3 years, and then
Yeah, I'm a bit the same.
and then go and
Yeah.
try to look for something. Oh, I haven't even looked at that shoot yet. Or, you get so focused on a good image, and then you forget about all the others. So again, I've got hard drives full of the number twos and number threes but I try, actually, I've been really good the last 18 months. I go through and I rate them and grade them, and I'm a little bit more organized about it, whereas before I just go straight to that image and choose it and just forget about the rest. But yeah, no, now they're all rated, and it's nice, when you can 4 and 5 star 90% of your shoot sometimes. Yeah, which is good.
Nice. Are you printing yourself or are you using a lab?
No, I use a lab. I had a large format printer, but they don't like not being used every day up north. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
pretty much destroyed a large format printer with not using it enough, and I put it on a truck down to Perth for parts. So yeah, I use a lab, and I think, yeah, maybe one day when somebody, some benefactor sponsors me into my own, then maybe I'll get a lab. If I ever move somewhere cooler, actually should be what I say. If I
Yeah.
ever move somewhere cooler, then yeah. But I stupidly run my air conditioner 24/7 just to look after the prints, let alone
Yeah.
doing it to look after a printer. But yeah, yeah, it was a bad business decision to get my own.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Have you ever hit a creative,
yes, most definitely.
and what did you do about it? Did you just sit rocking in the corner like I do, or did you?
Yeah, pretty much. No, it was from 2000 and end of 2018 through to 2021. I didn't even actually pick up a
Wow.
camera.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't very well. So yeah, that was definitely my creative wall. For photography, I forced myself to start painting again, and drawing again, and take up ceramics and pottery again during the end of that times. And then I think I just, was in a good enough headspace to start shooting again. 2021, I was fortunate enough to be asked to join some good friends up in the Kimberley. And so, it was very, very, very moving driving back into that country
Yeah.
after being away from it for nearly 2 years over COVID. So yeah, well, 18 months over COVID. So yeah, I sort of drove from far north Queensland down to Perth during a COVID break, and then went to, down south coast, and sort of got my camera out around the sand dunes in the Eyre Peninsula. Yeah,
Nice.
so and then yeah, it was a good spot actually to get the camera out again after such a
Yeah.
long break.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you see as photography's place in society?
Photography's place in society is, I think, to well, it's to communicate. It's to communicate everything,
Mm.
and communicate everything from a visual perspective, and to back up the words with almost everything. Like want to, I want to show everyone how beautiful the landscape is,
Yep.
and then there's another photojourno that wants to tell everybody how amazing everyone's story is, and then another photographer wants to tell everyone all of the horrible things that are going on. I think it's just got an absolute place
Yeah.
in storytelling in every single genre across the board. Yep.
Yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
Having as a sustainable business, like it's just, social media doesn't put food on tables
No,
usually.
no.
Yeah, unless you're lucky enough to have 100,000 followers. So yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge with photographers at the moment, and getting it off screen and onto walls or into books or into
Yeah.
print in some way, shape, or form that is, going to give them the satisfaction as as or as a trade and as producers, if it's a trade, or if it's producing artwork, or if it's the real estate and the architectural photographers, what the AI potentially could do to them. But I think it's one step ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I guess I think everybody thought that film transition to digital was going to kill photography, and Photoshop was going to kill
Yeah,
photography, and
photography's been dying for nearly, 40 years.
century. Yeah. Yeah. So, I think the challenge is just to stay on top of the game, and just create value in human creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you see its future being?
I don't know that. I think the future, or the future of photography, I think will be like every kind of arts or arts genre, whether it's writing or photography. I think it will that there'll still be demand for it. I
Yeah.
think, if you're writers, there must be, and even musicians. Someone was telling me yesterday that musicians, are struggling because you just punch a few words into the AI program and it spits out amazing lyrics and an amazing melody and the best drums you've ever heard. But I think the biggest challenge is showing people the value in human creation. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I personally think that humans will always go out and create, and in particular, from a landscape perspective, anyway, people will always want to try and show what they're seeing out in the world. And I don't think I see that ever stopping, not unless, I guess, electronics all completely disappear from the earth, or the humans would disappear from the earth. One of
yeah.
the two happens, then yeah, photography's dead. But as long as there's people and cameras and electronics around, I think that it'll keep going.
And I think like the building relationships with clients and customers are going to become a big part of of it's not going to be about pricing. It's going to be
No,
about how you relate to your potential clients, and how they perceive you. And I think that's where it will sit, and because people will still want produced work if they like you.
what do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
I go camping a lot. So I go camping a lot. If I'm not out shooting, I am usually making some ceramics or some pottery creations.
Okay.
Or I'm usually out bush in the middle of nowhere with my dog.
What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
Best piece of advice? I'll start with the worst piece of advice.
Yeah, go for it.
I hate wide angle lenses, and someone told me I should get one, and I got one, and I hate it, never used it. So
Okay, yeah.
that's the
My
worst
wide
piece of
angle's almost
advice.
never off the camera.
Oh,
I have to
I
keep
can't.
reminding myself to keep rid of
Yeah.
and going for the longer lenses.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see. I just find I can't. I
I
don't
guess
take
from
the
an
80.
aircraft, I get it.
Yeah, the best advice. I don't know if it was advice, but I think the best thing that someone said to me, if you get somewhere and you don't feel like shooting, don't
Yeah,
just enjoy it.
I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Are there any photographers that I should be talking to on the podcast?
Yes, there's lots. There's lots. Australian photographers,
Doesn't matter as long as they're
does it
landscape
matter?
based.
Well, I've just spent a lot of time there's some really amazing photographers actually. So I'm going to give you their names.
Yep, that's fine.
So Matt Crimmins, you
Okay.
might be familiar with, is based in Victoria.
Yep.
Russell Ord,
Some of
it's
Russell's
just,
work.
yeah, and it's just such down to earth, honest human.
Mm.
Um, yeah, landscape does mostly people. Shelley Pearson, who is a wildlife bird photographer, places a lot of the landscape principles on the way that she photographs wildlife, and she's definitely absolutely worth talking to. Nigel Gaunt, who I shot with last year,
Yep.
he's most definitely worth talking to. Karen Waller, have you
I've
met
seen
Karen?
Karen's work. Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't met her
so
yet.
yeah, Karen Waller is produces amazing work across so many genres,
Mm.
but her landscape work's very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I think so anyway. So that's
Nice.
who I
All
think
right.
you
Well,
should talk
thank you
to.
for those. I've only got one more question for you, and it's
Yeah,
a very important one that we want to get to the bottom of. Do you like
yeah,
pineapple on pizza?
no,
That's fair enough.
no. I like pineapple. Oh no, actually, I like pineapple. I just can't eat it. So
Oh, okay.
that's why, yeah, yeah.
What about pineapple juice?
No, again, I love it, but I can't eat. I can't.
No.
It's too acidic for my stomach. It's
No, right.
fragile stomach. Yeah,
No,
love pineapple actually.
no.
Yeah, yeah. I would have had a whole. I would have said yes, whole pineapple, grass and all on my peat years ago, but no, not anymore.
Fair enough. Fair
Showing
enough.
my age.
Well, it's been really wonderful talking to you, Tanya. Thank you very much for taking the time to share your stories. Where can people find your work?
They can find my probably most recent catalog is by Instagram, or they can find it on my website, which is Artistic Image Co. And then there's a few like behind the scenes stuff. Fuji did some. I'm very lucky that Fuji did some behind the scenes filming from some flights, so that's on YouTube on and I think I've got them on Linktree on my
Awesome.
Instagram. So I think most of the things are on Linktree in my
Yeah.
Instagram.
Okay.
So
Well, I'll make
um,
sure that I get whatever links I can off there
yeah,
and include them in the show notes.
yeah, it's pretty. That yeah, the guys did a great job. Christian and Blake did a great job filming. They yeah, they did a great job. Yeah,
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, Tanya.
my pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com, along with prints and photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne, and I hope to see you out shooting soon.
Thanks, Grant.